So it's 11 o'clock, so people will probably just join as you go if people are a few minutes late, but yeah, we'll just get started. So, hello everyone, whenever you're going to be watching this. My name is Michaela. I'm the bereavement program intern at Near North Palliative Care Network. And today we have Kelly, our MSW Master of Social Work placement student, with us talking about children and youth grief. So I will hand it over to you, Kelly.
All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for viewing this webinar on children and youth grief. My name is Kelly Kimberly, and I'm a Master of Social Work student and completing my placement at Near North Palliative Care Network. So this slide shows some writing from Dr. Alan Wolfelt. So last week, Thursday, November 19th, was Children's Grief Awareness Day. So I'll just read this little writing from Dr. Alan Wolfelt. Children's Grief Awareness Day allows us to advocate that any child that is old enough to love is old enough to mourn. We can work together to be advocates and teach other adults how children are natural mourners, but that they need love and support of caring adults. To be bereaved in part means to have special needs. This day allows us to highlight what some of those special needs of grieving children are and to help others create places where children experiencing grief are safe to openly and authentically mourn. And we know that if children mourn well, they go on to live well and love well. So this is by Dr. Alan Wolfelt. He is a noted author, educator, and grief counselor. He serves as the director of the Center for Loss and Life Transition in Colorado. He has authored more than 50 best-selling books on grief and loss, and he conducts many workshops and training around grief and loss. So today we'll be discussing, first we'll be talking about key terms around grief and loss, and then we'll look at some common myths about grieving. And then we'll be looking at how children grieve based on their age. And then we'll discuss ways of that caregivers or support people can help children through the grief process. And we'll end with grief rights for children and youth. So to begin, we'll look at some key terms. So first being loss. So this is our experience of losing someone or something that is meaningful to a person. So we can lose a person by death, maybe a fight and we just lose our connection with someone. We can lose a possession, or we can lose even a feeling such as trust or safety. When we look at bereavement, this is our experience of losing someone to death. Next is attachment, and this term refers to our emotional connection to different people or to different things. So children can have a meaningful connection to different toys. We've seen children being very connected to, say, blankets, and different songs we can even be attached to. Next are two terms that can be used interchangeably, but however have distinct meanings. So grief is our internal response to loss. So these include our emotions of losing something. So emotions can range from anger, sadness, guilt, depression, and it also can be our thoughts around that particular loss. And it's important to know that everyone grieves differently. So no one person will grieve the exact same, even if they did lose the same person that in their life. And mourning is our outward expression of our grief. So our examples of mourning include crying, sharing our feelings with someone that we trust, praying, and participating in rituals such as the wake and funerals. So it is through mourning that we work through our grief process. So once again, just a reminder, a child who is old enough to love is old enough to grieve. So there are many reasons why children grieve. And when we think of grief, the most common reason that we think about is death. But that is not the only reason why children grieve. There are many other reasons. So another one could be divorce of parents. This can cause a lot of changes within a child's life. There could be a move from their family home, moving from schools. So there's a lot of loss that can be experienced by children when the divorced parents happen. Another reason why children grieve is losing a friend or friendship. So we've all been children, we've all gone through some friendships. Maybe we just grow apart or move schools, but that is a loss for children. The death of a family pet, again, a major move, changing schools or losing their prized possession are all some of the reasons why children grieve. And as the COVID pandemic moves on, we are all experiencing loss. So just being aware of all the loss that children are going through, not being able to, hanging out with friends, having to stay home. So there's a lot of loss and a lot of grief that children are currently going through. Next, we're going to move on to some common myths about grief. So these myths are taken from the book When Children Grieve by John W. James, Russell Freeman, and Leslie Landon Matthews. So these myths are things that we tend to learn from childhood and get passed on from generation to generation. So the first myth I'll be discussing is don't feel bad. So as a society, we are not generally comfortable with negative feelings or events. We have all heard growing up examples such as when there is a death, don't feel bad, the person is in a better place. Or when we fail at something, don't feel bad, you'll do better next time. Or when a child loses a toy, don't feel bad, we'll get you another toy. So basically what these statements are saying is that we should not feel bad, and what we are feeling is wrong, and we need to distract that person and focus them on something that's happy and maybe positive. However, through grief, we need to create a space where it's okay to feel those negative emotions. And in order to work our way through these painful emotions, we need to be given that opportunity to actually feel those and work through them. Not being told not to feel bad, because that just covers up what we're actually feeling and dismisses what we're feeling. Feeling bad and sad is a natural and normal reaction to losing someone that we love to death. The next myth that we'll look at is replace the loss. So how many times have we heard growing up, if our first experience of losing a pet to death, don't worry, we'll get another dog on Saturday. Or when we lose that toy or that favorite blanket, as children, we wouldn't go anywhere without. We hear, don't worry, we can just buy another toy or buy another blanket. Or when we, as children, lose that friend or get into a fight with a friend, we hear messages from our parents or loved ones, don't worry, you're young, you're a great person, you'll make other friends. So this is just a way as we try to replace something as a way to avoid, again, the negative emotions by replacing them with happy. But when we replace something, we don't fully grieve that loss, and really we can't move on, or we have a difficult time moving on. The third myth is grieve alone. So as human beings, it's not natural to isolate. We are social beings, but isolating and trying to grieve alone is a learned behavior. So ever remember hearing as a child, if you're gonna cry, go to your room. Or as a child, when there is a death of a family, being told by their family members, leave your mom alone right now. She's having a hard time. She just needs her alone time to get through this. As human beings, we need other people to help us through the grieving process, and we need to be able to talk about it and feel safe to talk about our emotions and not be judged. If you want to think about this, it's like shaking that pop bottle every time we stuff down our feelings. Eventually, it will explode. And it's same with us when we keep stuffing down those feelings and we're grieving alone and not talking about it. It will come out some way or another. The next myth we're going to look at is be strong. So ever hear someone say after a death, you need to be strong for your kids, or you need to be strong for your family, or feel that you have to be strong because you're keeping the family together. After losing someone, what we're actually doing is we're acting strong all the time, is we're actually showing our children, and we're modeling the fact that it's not okay to be sad and upset. So our children are like little sponges, so they are going to soak up that and model what we're doing. So they're going to think that they have to be strong for everyone else and not be able to show their emotions. The next one is very common, and I hear it quite a bit when someone has lost someone to death. So people believe that if they keep busy and distract themselves, that the grief process will get easier. They're just going to throw themselves into work or work around the house, that kind of thing. But the fact is, this is just a distraction, and our feelings aren't going to go away by keeping busy and not working through them and talking about it. And then finally, time heals all wounds. So have you ever heard after a death of a loved one, after a few months, you need to get over it already, or it's been a year, it's time for you to move on? It's important to note that there's no time limit on grief, and losing someone you love, the pain will always be there. However, if you have that opportunity in a safe place to talk about it, it will get easier. So next, how do children grieve? So there's many factors that affect the way that children will express their grief. So this is age. So we'll talk about it over the next few slides and show common ways children grieve and understand death based on age. Gender. Grief is expressed differently depending on your gender and depending on culture and traditions and basically how we were taught growing up. The developmental stage of the child. So the next few slides do go by age, but take it as just kind of a guideline because every child is different. So a young child may be more mature than, their age. So these are just guidelines that we're going to go through over the next few slides. Another factor is their personality. Again, we talked about how they see others grieve. Like I said, children are little sponges, so they're gonna look how others are grieving and how they're acting and how they're feeling and expressing their feelings. And most likely they'll believe that's the way that they're supposed to be acting and feeling. Another factor is the relationship to the person that has died. So they can be very close and had very fond memories of someone that died, or even have, a family member where they didn't have too many memories and a lot of it was negative. So that's going to make them grieve differently. And finally, the amount and kind of the support that is available to them. So children are going to grieve if they have, if they're taught that they have to grieve alone, or if they have a bunch of supportive people that allow them to talk, or it's somewhere in the middle. So all these kids are going to be grieving differently. So these, like I said, are guidelines. So looking at children between the ages of 0 to 2. So at this age, children don't understand death or have the language to express their feelings. However, they can experience loss and separation, and can pick up feelings such as anxiety and distress of their caregivers. So what we're going to look at in these young ones for signs of distress when it comes to grief is irritability, increased crying, changes in sleep or eating patterns, and withdrawing. And ways to help these little ones is just keeping routine and lots of cuddles and speaking calmly to them. The next age group is 2 to 4 years old. So children in this age group do not understand that death is final. They may see it as abandonment, or they may see that the person is able to come back. They may ask questions over and over again, possibly the same questions. So being prepared for that and being patient during that process. These kids will most likely express themselves through their behavior and play, as they don't have the language to properly express their feelings. And they can experience separation anxiety, and they may be aware that something is wrong or something happened and there's changes within the household. So with these young ones, so some kinds of distress that we want to keep an eye on through the grief process is they may display regressive behaviors in areas such as sleep. So they may not want to go to sleep. They may be scared to go to sleep. They may wake up throughout the day or the night, those kind of things. Potty training or eating, they may become clingy. For example, if they lost one parent, they might be scared that the other parent is going to go away, so they might become extra clingy to that parent, irritable, and experiencing nightmares. So ways to help these young children between the ages of 2 to 4, providing routine and safety. You know, we all know that children fight this, but routine is something that children need and thrive on. So providing brief and honest answers to their questions, and avoid euphemisms, as these can be confusing for children. So, you know, avoiding such words as the person is gone, or they have passed on, or we've lost this person. You know, children's minds start racing, and they may think, well, why aren't we looking for them? Those kind of things. So it can be very confusing. So making sure that you're honest. Providing lots of physical and emotional support, again, lots of cuddles, and then reassurance, nurturing, and consistency. So trying to keep a normal routine as much as you possibly can. And you want to encourage these children to express their grief through play. So this is just an example of a grief and activity that you could do with these kids, or these young ones, is reading to them and reading together, and trying to get them to relate to the characters in books. So moving on to children age 4 to 9. So around 4 years old, magical thinking begins within children. So this happens when children believe that, you know, things that they say, or thoughts that they have, or wishes that they might have said have caused things to happen. So when it comes to the death of a loved one, a young child may have gotten into a fight with that loved one maybe a week prior, and they may believe that that fight is what caused their death. So just being aware of that and talking to them about that, and making sure that they know that they did not cause the death. So depending on the developmental stage as well with these children, they start to begin that understand is not reversible, but they may not believe that it could happen to them. And then some may lack the words to express their feelings. So sometimes grief can come out in different ways: anger, frustration, those kind of things. So signs of distress with this age group is regressive behaviors, again, in sleep and eating, may engage in violent play, They may ask, again, repetitive questions. They may ask a lot of questions like the how, the why, who else is this going to happen to? And they may have a lot of concerns about their safety and abandonment. So just a lot of reassurance is needed. And also these children might express strong reactions with mixed emotions. One time they can be very angry, and then the next they can be going on and playing like nothing happened. So ways to help these children. So again, being honest, direct, and brief. Don't be afraid to use the words death, died, and dead. And this is actually encouraged. As of, like I said, euphemisms can be very confusing to children. So letting them know that this person is dead, and you can help them to understand by, you could say things like daddy's heart stopped working, and you can even show them, like, get them to feel their own heartbeat and let them know, that person's heartbeat doesn't work anymore. You want to allow children to talk about their experiences and feelings in a safe environment, and encourage creative outlets to express their grief. So this can be done through drawing, painting, storytelling, making their own comics, those kind of things. Once again, be prepared. Children may ask a lot of questions. They may want to know how, and ask the same questions over and over again. So being patient and being there to support them both physically and emotionally. So this is just another example of another grief activity. So this is a feelings journal. So this activity can be very beneficial to help the children realize what they're feeling. If they're having a hard time coming up with words, you can always, Google on the internet and find those different faces that have the emotions written underneath them, and then find out get them to point to the faces that they're feeling. So as you can see from the picture, you pick out their feelings and their emotions, and you assign a color to that emotion. And then what they do, it's like a feelings journal. They start painting, coloring, how much that feeling is taking up in their body, or how much they feel that body is, that feeling is in their body. So that this can change and keep up. So, depression might fill up the entire page one day, and then the next day they might have hope and joy filling up most of the page. And it just goes to show that feelings can come and go, and help them express their feelings in a healthy way. So moving on to children 9 years to 12 years old. So around this age, they start to understand that death is final. They may become curious about the physical aspects of death. And a lot of children this age know how to express their feelings and emotions, but may choose not to. But also within this age range, they might not know how to express their feelings. I know there's even adults that have problems expressing their feelings, and grief is a very complex thing to go through. So it can be very difficult to know exactly what you're feeling at that time. This age group may be concerned with others. So they may be looking and observing how others are acting and how they're feeling, and then just try to mimic what they are, because they don't really know what the appropriate way to grieve is. So some signs of distress with this age group. So these can be problems at school. So they can be withdrawing from their friends, not participating much in school. They could be falling asleep. Their concentration could be poor. They could be acting out. And then again, with the changes in sleep or eating patterns. And there could be possible role confusion with this age group. This age group may feel the need to take on the caregiving role of siblings or their parent, and try to help them through the grieving process. So ways to help these kids is you want to try the best you can to model ways and healthy ways to express your emotions and different self-care practices that can help you get through the day. Again, providing a variety of activities to express themselves. We all know, even as adults, it's hard to put feelings in words sometimes and just talk about it. So, giving them the opportunity to draw, to make comics. Movement is a big thing too, just to get some of that pent up energy out. If a child is, expressing a lot of anger, trying to get them to um, maybe participate in sports and in play, so that kind of thing. So just trying to get their emotions out in a healthy manner. Again, you want to answer their questions honestly, and you want to use the words deaf, dead, and died. Um, this is less confusing as they grow up if you start off very young using these words. You want to be a good listener, and you want to try to avoid giving advice if possible. Or unless they're asking for your advice, it's okay. Once again, creating safety, and maybe towards the top end of these children, around 12, is when they start wanting a little bit more independence from the family. So they may not feel comfortable or want to talk to their parents. So helping them to think of people and things that can help them cope and support them. So you want to be present, but also allow for alone time with these kids. So more examples of grief activities. So this one, the memory bracelets, you can do any way you want. You can go to the dollar store and buy different colored beads. You can get charms. You can get beads with lettering on them. So there's really no right way to do this. It's just how the child wants to make their bracelet. Like they can put the name of the person who died. The beads can be, the person's favorite color or their birthstone. And then they can add charms to it. So it's all up to you on how you want to make the bracelets, but this is something that children can carry with them and have a reminder of their loved one. The next is a memory puzzle. So you could do this on like a piece of Bristol board or just paper, it's up to you, and then cutting out the shapes of a puzzle and just having the child, so for example, on each piece of puzzle, writing a happy memory of that they had with their loved one. Or you can write something that they miss about their loved one or something that they wish they had more time to do. So basically, whatever the child wants to do, they can put it on their puzzle pieces and put them together. Finally, looking at children, youth that are ages 12 years old and up. So this age group, they tend to accept that death is a part of life. So they are able to think of the different concepts of death, such as the afterlife, and they might start thinking about their own mortality and what's going to happen to them, kind of thing. Mourning may be more traditional as they display feelings of sadness, anger, denial. So they may have a lot of questions about meaning of life, the loss, questioning about traumatic events, death. And then they also might be forced to take on a caregiving role. So again, like we discussed in the last age group, older children might be forced to, again, take care of their younger children or younger siblings, or take care of the parent that is having a difficult time doing their own grief. So they might fall into that myth of having to be strong for the family and taking on that caregiving role. So signs of distress with this age group. So they can be unpredictable at times. And with their emotional reactions. So we all know if we've experienced grief, it can be an emotional roller coaster. So with this age group, it can be especially intense, as they may not have the coping skills to properly deal with all those emotions as they don't know what to do with them. They might have problems at school. So once again, they might be skipping school, withdrawing from their friends. There's a possibility of increased risk-taking behavior, and this can lead to drug and alcohol and unsafe behaviors with this age group. Once again, the role confusion, and there's a possibility of suicidal ideation. So this is very important to have a conversation about with children. Suicide tragically happens to even children. So having that open conversation, and if they have any thoughts about wanting to die or take their own life, just making sure that you're taking any of those threats seriously and seeking professional help for that. So ways to help youth, so in allowing them to express their feelings without trying to fix, change, or take it away. Always remember that grief is that person's grief, and they have every right to feel how they're feeling, and everyone's going to be grieving differently. Providing safety and support, even if the youth doesn't ask for it. So just reassuring that if they don't want to talk, that you're there for them if they need. Again, asking questions honestly. Sometimes youth and older children don't want to talk, so trying to ask open-ended questions. So these are questions that are going to require more than a yes or no answer. So trying to encourage a dialogue and expression of feelings, and also being a model for your feelings. So telling them that you feel sad or you feel angry, and you miss certain memories of the person that died. Just modeling that behavior and encouraging them to do the same. So again, with these children, they may not want to talk to family. They may not feel comfortable. They may feel that, their family has enough on their plate, and, they want to be strong. So helping the youth get connected to other support systems. So these can be friends, parents of their friends, teachers, therapists, coach, social worker at school. And if they do identify someone that they trust, that's an adult, calling that person and letting them know what's going on in their life, and letting them know that you do use the words death and dead, and you're very open about talking about that, and letting them know that they want your child wants them to support them through this if they are able to. Some more grief activities. So writing a goodbye letter. There's no right way to do this. It's all basically on what the child or youth wants to say. So they can write a letter of the best memories that they had, or remembering a time that they had together, the fun times, the bad times, wishes that they never got to complete because of the death, their feelings, their hopes, and thank yous. So there's a lot of templates that you can even just Google if the youth is having a hard time trying to figure out exactly what to write. There's a lot of prompts for grief journaling out there, and just looking and finding what's best for them. Another activity is called the graffiti wall. So this is just, their creative expression, and just allowing them to have that big piece of paper, or if you have somewhere in your house that you'll allow them to draw on walls. If not, like Bristol board works, and just allowing them to color their emotions out, or writing poems, or whatever they feel like on this wall, just to get their feelings out. So just a summary basically on tips as caregivers and support people of children and youth that are grieving. So you want to acknowledge and validate their feelings and emotions. I couldn't stress this enough. It's just important that children know that it's okay to have those negative emotions, and it's okay to feel mad, sad, angry. Like those are perfectly acceptable emotions to be feeling, and just creating that safe space for them to talk about. You want to be patient with children. Grief is an emotional roller coaster, and like I said, some children just don't understand and may be asking questions repeatedly. So just being prepared with that and being patient throughout that. You want to be available to them. You want to take care of yourself. So like I said, model your grief, but also you have to model healthy ways to cope with grief as well. And just letting them know that all their emotions are normal. Some people just think that they're weird or something's wrong with them because they're having all kinds of emotions, and just reminding them that it's normal and it's okay. So again, avoiding euphemisms. You don't want to tell a young child that, a loved one has gone to sleep. This can be very confusing for young children, as it may instill some fear. They may not want to go to sleep, or they may not want their loved ones to go to sleep for fear that they might not wake up. Or if you say that you lost someone, they may start asking questions. Well, why aren't we looking for them? Why can't we call the police and get someone out there? So using the words death, died, and dead is very important. And very important to know that everyone grieves differently, and letting people grieve the way that they feel they need to. And the most important thing, if you become worried about your child or youth and you just don't know how to support them anymore, or you're having problems dealing with your own grief, it's very important to seek out professional help. So I'm just going to end with some grief rights for children and youth. So this is important. You could just let youth and children know that they have some rights when it comes to grief. So the first one is I have the right to my own unique feelings. No one will feel exactly the way I do going through grief. Everyone grieves differently. I have the right to talk about my grief. So going back to those myths that we need to get rid of don't feel bad, you got to be strong. We have to encourage our children and youth to talk about it and talk about their feelings. I have the right to show my feelings of grief. They could be negative and they can be positive. It's okay to feel joy when you're thinking about positive memories of the person that died. I have the right to need others to support my grief. I have the right to get upset about daily problems. Grief can be very overwhelming for adults. So we just got to remember, children don't have coping strategies, and they may become frustrated with, everyday problems or what we think are little things. We got to remember that they're going through a lot and honor their grief. I have the right to grief bursts. So this is what happens when all of a sudden, out of nowhere, just the grief hits. That sadness, that depression just comes out of nowhere. And that's okay as well. That's normal. I have the right to use my beliefs about God to help me deal with my feelings about grief. You have the right to, if you are a religious person, you have the right to be angry at God for taking away your loved one. I have the right to figure out why the person I love died. So again, answering their questions honestly as you can, being direct, and trying to just figure out based on their developmental stage what they can handle, and just trying to use the language so they'll understand. I have the right to think and talk about my memories of the person who died. And then finally, I have the right to move forward, feel my grief, and over time heal. So those are the 10 grief rights for children and youth, and these can be applied to everyone that is going through a grief experience. So this quote is great to sum up grief. So grief is not a disorder, a disease, or a sign of weakness. It is an emotional, physical, and spiritual necessity, the price we pay for love. The only cure for grief is to grieve. And finally, I just want to end this presentation with some resources. There's a lot of resources out there. So these are just some websites that have a lot of, handouts. Some of the websites even have different webinars that you can look that are free, and just a lot of helpful tips on these websites. And finally, if you're very concerned about how your child or youth is grieving and you're concerned for their well-being and just need that extra support, there's always a service it's called Ontario 211. So you just dial 211, and what it is it's a community agency. It's an Ontario-wide. So you tell them what you're dealing with, and they'll be able to connect you and help you find services within your area. So that is it. And I just want to thank you, everyone, for taking your time. And I'm hopeful that this was helpful for you. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelly. I learned so much from this presentation. So, and I'm sure all of our volunteers and everyone who watches this will as well. So yeah, if you have any questions or anything, you can always direct them to my email, which is bereavement@nnpcn.com, or you can call our office. Our number is 705-497-9239. Just looking at the chat here, Francine said, sorry she missed the beginning. This was a great presentation and very informative. Thank you. Yes. So thank you so much, everyone. And this will be posted probably early next week. And yeah, thank you again, Kelly. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.